Okay, I am Charles Peralo, and I'm here with the one and only Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. How are you doing today, Cenk?
Good, brother. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. It's New York. It's sunny. It's a nice day. So just diving into questions because I don't want to consume that much of your time. I'm a libertarian. I have the website beinglibertarian.com. We're pretty big on social media right now. One thing that really blitzed a lot of news and how a lot of people want us to interview was the Alex Jones thing, as you probably remember. And Alex is definitely not my favorite libertarian. In fact, I'd say the least favorite libertarian. Would you have any comments on that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess Alex is a weirdo. He crashed the set, totally uninvited. But that's what he is. He's like a living, breathing troll. And so he thought it was cute to get that kind of attention. Um, life in a big city, we have to, get beyond it and move on.
You calling Alex Jones a living,
They're
breathing?
French guys. I don't want to deal with French guys.
You calling Alex Jones a living, breathing troll is why I liked your show on CNN quite a bit. I kind of view him as the only guy to ever make money off of 9/11, mainly because I think he just flat out scams people with conspiracy theories. Would you kind of agree with that?
Of course he does. Of course it's a scam. I don't think he believes anything he says. There's two theories, maybe three on Alex. One is that he's a lunatic who actually believes the things that he peddles, like that Sandy Hook was a conspiracy and all the kids are somewhere else where they were actors. Insane theories like that. And that means, he probably should be locked up in an asylum somewhere. Or you think people are stupid, they'll believe anything I say. So I'll make money off of them. The third theory is that, and this is my favorite, even though it's the least likely, is a false flag operation. And if you were going to do any conspiracy, what you would do is you would create a character like Alex Jones that discredits the idea of any conspiracy ever actually existing. And so that you can say, oh, come on, you think we did that? What are you, one of those conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones?
So the flat earthers probably now are thinking maybe Alex Jones is wearing his reptile mask or whatever. But he claims to be a libertarian. I've never found him really a libertarian at all. He supports Donald Trump. He hates free trade. He's very isolationist. I mean, who are some libertarians that I know your views are not libertarian, but who are some libertarians that you've met or just heard of that you could get behind? Obviously, there's one running for president right now who I'm pretty good friends with. What would you say on that front?
Yeah, without getting into all the different names, Gary Johnson's a perfectly good enough example to discuss. So I think libertarians are principled and honest, and of course not all of them, but in general. And I prefer them greatly to Republicans or what these days people that call themselves conservatives that actually don't really know what it means to be conservative. Um, and and so, for example, I agree with Gary Johnson on, I'd probably say nearly half the issues, which is not bad. So in terms of we're way too involved in the world, we've got to, uh, stop being interventionist so much, it's counterproductive. The war on drugs is insane, and the list goes on. On the other hand, there's things that I just cannot agree with, and I think are fundamentally wrong. That's the other half. So it is what it is. Hey, we're all Americans. That's the debate we're supposed to be having.
So I'm going to guess you're not going to enjoy my abolish the corporate income tax, cut spending 50%, and the minimum wage type stuff. I'm going to guess that's not for you.
No, not remotely. So for example, I'm a believer in regulation. So conservatives and to some degree libertarians have made regulation a dirty word. Well, it is not. and there's regulation everywhere in the world. It's called laws, and there's a reason why they exist, because otherwise we have anarchy. The question isn't whether you have a lot of regulation or a little regulation. The question is, what's your task? The regulation should fit the task. It should be no smaller or no larger than that task. And I feel that libertarians oftentimes are idealistic, and they remind me actually a little bit of the communists. That no, we'll strip away all the laws and regulations and hold hands and everything will be lovely. That's not my experience with human nature.
Okay, so you know what? To give a little more background on myself, I am not one of those ideologue libertarians out waving my Ron Paul flag saying, "Oh, when the Fed is ended and heroin is legal, then we will have change." I'm not one of those types of libertarians. I believe in some regulation. I believe in some moderation. But do you think there are any regulations out there that the government does that are clearly bad for business? For example, there are a lot of laws like occupational licensing with hairdressers that kind of seem a little burdensome. A lot of people have said they don't teach things. To get a bar, to like get a liquor license in most parts of the country, it costs well over $25,000, which hurts blue collar people and helps the wealthier. With regulation, let's say on healthcare, we're probably the only country right now where you can't import drugs from other nations like Europe can or Canada can. Do you see some deregulation as a good thing, and do you think we could have a libertarian liberal alliance on some of these things?
Absolutely, there's no question. So look, there's this caricature of progressives as being de facto in favor of regulation, which makes no sense. It depends. What are we regulating, and how much are we regulating? Like, the progressives generally want the government out of their lives. So I don't want the government in my bedroom. I don't want it in my doctor's office, and I don't want it anywhere that it's not needed. Since a friend of mine has this kind of bizarre analogy, but for some reason I like. It's like asking somebody, "How big a pipe do you want?" Well, I don't know. What's the job? So the pipe depends on the job. So the regulation depends on what we're trying to solve. So are there situations where we overregulate? Of course there are. Can we agree on some of those? Of course. So your example of drugs is an excellent one. The only reason we don't allow for drugs to be imported into the country is because of crony capitalism. The drug companies are among the biggest donors to both the Democratic Party, and they are trying to kill competition in the free market, passing a quote-unquote regulation that says we're not allowed to Canada, that the drugs from Canada are dangerous. So there's a lot of agreement we can have there.
Okay, now another thing is this is something that kind of touched with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. They were not the biggest fans of Uber, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, a very popular app. They took the side of the cab industry. It looks like Donald Trump has joined them as well. I mean, I live in Manhattan. My grandfather was actually for 10 years a cab driver, and he's well aware of the medallion situation. They kind of just made government-granted monopolies, like with the cab industry. So would you say you take more of a pro-Uber stance? Would you say that those are types of regulations, like really blue-collar stuff, bring power back to the people? Are those the types of regulations you could see some ground on? And would you say you disagree with Bernie and Hillary on this?
Yeah, this is where I part ways a little bit with some of my liberal friends. I've gotten yelled at in San Francisco getting into an Uber. I have to confess I love Uber. And so in terms of what the regulations should be when it comes to cabs and Ubers, then you're really going to get into the minutia there of how to do that. Because you do need some regulations. You need safety regulations and some workplace protections, etc. But I don't want to regulate to the point where we're killing off innovation. And I think Uber is a fantastic innovation. And honestly, I use it all the time.
That's great to hear. Now, with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, I didn't really follow much of where you had on the primary. Did you have a particular stance, a particular favorite? I mean, I'm going to assume you were a big Lincoln Chafee fan because we all know that campaign went very well. But any in the main two there?
Yeah. I was amused by his performance in the first debate, though. Before challenged on a piece of legislation that he voted for. No, it's my first vote. Come on, you got to give me a mulligan on that.
You have to love that accent, though. You have to love the New England accent.
And then he was out. But In terms of Sanders or Smith, no, I'm definitely a Sanders guy. Going for change, and I'm a real progressive. So, everybody knows Hillary Clinton's the establishment candidate. I don't know anyone honestly pretending otherwise. I'm anti-establishment. I can't stand the status quo. I can't stand the money in politics, the crony capitalism. And so Bernie Sanders would have changed that. That's why independents loved him. That's why he did so much better in the polling against Republicans than Hillary Clinton did. But the Democratic Party establishment and their infinite wisdom in order to protect their own jobs and their own system, of course, went with the establishment can.
I mean, with Bernie Sanders, I kind of look at it and say this was a little bit of a similar situation to Rand Paul, mainly because I just kind of, Bernie did much better than Rand Paul, and I donated about $1,500 to Rand's campaign, which, yeah, that was great money down the toilet. But I look at the Bernie campaign, and I see kind of a guy who was 74, 75 years old, kind of sounded like he had a golf ball in his mouth. Wasn't in the best shape. With Rand Paul, it's kind of like he has that weird hairdo. He has that weird look to him. Do you think at the end of the day, like maybe the anti-establishment candidates, they don't succeed because, hey, maybe Mitt Romney is just so much better presented? And I look at like the Democrats in 2020, if Hillary doesn't win, which by the way, I support Hillary over Trump. I'm just going to tell you that because I think every capitalist should. But I look at it and say, do you think like Cory Booker, who's a much better looking guy, who's a little bit more moderate, much more establishment, do you think he could kind of be the stand-in, the better looking guy? How do you feel on that?
Yeah. No, I actually going to part ways with you on political analysis there. I actually think that in this day and age, people are looking for someone who's more authentic. So, like you, which is very normal because I, in the beginning, thought Bernie Sanders' appearance probably hurt him. But by the end, I came to the conclusion that, in fact, it helped him. Because, Martin O'Malley had very similar views to Bernie Sanders, actually. But every time he did his standard political shtick and he looked good and he had a nice suit on and then he'd roll up his sleeves, people went, oh, yeah. It felt so inauthentic. So, and in terms of the establishment candidate winning, well, that's a mixed bag right there. So we did this thing called the Sweet 16, and there were 16 Republican candidates, and I tried to predict, when I had the audience try to predict who would win among the Republicans. This was before, right after Trump announced, before any campaigning had happened, and I predicted Rand Paul. And so obviously I was wrong about that, but the reason that I said that was because I thought that the Republican Party, even more so than the Democratic Party, was in an anti-establishment mood, and they would make a populist. Well, I had no idea what kind of a populist would arise, and that turned out to be Trump and not Rand Paul. But he's not an establishment candidate, and he won fairly easily on the Republican side. And on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton is the most establishment candidate we've ever had. Nobody knew who Bernie Sanders was a year ago. Nobody knew. We in politics know him. The country didn't know him at all. And he made up a 60-point difference in polling. That's amazing. So somebody with no name recognition, the most liberal senator of the country, to close a 60-point lead in the national polling, that means that the country is in an anti-establishment populist mood. Hillary Clinton survived on the skin of her teeth. If she wins, as she's likely to do now, I think it'll be the last election the establishment wins.
I mean, with regards to Donald Trump, I was actually, that ego zone place. With Trump Tower, I was actually there when Donald Trump announced his run. I showed up with a couple of friends of mine. I was like, oh yeah, we got some special tickets, free food, free drinks, why not? And we kind of just sat there and like, yeah, he's not going to really announce. And there's a photo of me right as he's announcing, faking a heart attack, giving him the finger, which I kind of look at and I say, do you think this is the biggest joke? Do you think this campaign, the Trump campaign, is a year-long episode of South Park? Because I look at it and I say, here's a guy who, first off, I think is the least fiscally conservative Republican they've put up since Wendell Willkie. I think that honestly, Hillary Clinton, because of trade, because of clearer like realities on spending, I think Hillary Clinton is more fiscally conservative than Donald Trump. I mean, do you think there's any grounds with that? Do you think that this is just nuts? And why do you think he won?
Yeah, look, there's a lot I can't about Hillary Clinton's policy, but it's not even close when it comes to who's more fiscally conservative. The guy Trump would put like a $10 trillion hole in the budget. It's madness. Yeah, of course Hillary Clinton's more fiscally conservative. So Trump, look, as with everything in his life, now because he's running for president, I have had to look through his life with a microscope and figure out who this guy is. And I know who he is. He's a genuine loser. He's a child who got daddy's money and likes to see his name in lights, but couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag. And so, like everything in his life, this campaign has been him fumbling and fumbling forward because he was born not on third base, but like an inch from home plate. And the idiot thinks he's got an inside the ballpark home run, right? Like, oh my God, did I earn this? But in reality, he's just been blowing his dad's money for his whole life. He's the worst businessman, the worst capitalist. I mean, there's a saying called "the house always wins," and except he was running the casino, but he doesn't get any more incompetent than Donald Trump. So how in the world is he in this position? The one thing he has, he's kind of an idiot savant in drawing attention to himself. That's the only thing he's got. But in politics, that's pretty important. So he drew a lot of attention to himself, and he was strong. This is what I yell at the Democrats for all the time. They don't understand the importance of strength in politics. They're constantly cowering and trying to appease Republicans and prove to the country how center-right they are. That is such a dumb plan. So you show strength. Look at this moron, Donald Trump. All he did was grab attention and show strength, and he's almost president. Politics is not that complicated. So, having said that, at the end of all those enterprises, when it looks like, hey, look, Trump's got something. Look at this Taj Mahal. Look at the Trump Tower, etc. No, it always fizzles at the end. It's just incompetence overwhelms everything else about him. So it'll overwhelm his advantages. And right now, he's a clown. That's who he is. He's a clown.
Now, do you think Bernie Sanders benefited because of Donald Trump? Here's Bernie Sanders going against the 1%. He's fighting these people off. And, you know, on the other side of the political aisle, there's a primary where there's a complete asshole who inherited every cent he has who's winning the race. Do you think Bernie Sanders rose partly because of Trump?
No, not really, to be honest. I think that there's a revolutionary wave out there, and Sanders caught that wave. It could have been Elizabeth Warren, and it wouldn't have been Bernie Sanders even 4 years ago. So it's not that Bernie Sanders is some sort of political genius. I like him a lot, bless his heart. He's just an authentic guy who was fighting for the same things for 40 years, and most of those 40 years, there was not a wave in the country to support those positions. There is today, and people can't stand the status quo. So when Bernie Sanders said, let's change it, a lot of progressives in the country, especially the young, said, hell yeah, let's do that right away. I don't think it had much to do with Trump.
Well, going into that authentic wave, I mean, we have on the Republican side, you know what, and on Hillary, we have an establishment candidate, someone who, I honestly, when it comes to Hillary Clinton, some people say, oh, it's the end if she wins. A lot of libertarians say that. I look at it like, no, she'll just be okay. Maybe she'll do a couple of okay things, a couple of bad things, the usual. But we have two other candidates who are third-party people here. One of them is Gary Johnson, who I've mentioned before. The other is Jill Stein. Now, I'm going to assume you probably, if you were to take the I side with quiz, Jill Stein would probably be with you the majority of the time. But when it comes to Jill Stein, I don't find her that authentic. And the reason is she's a doctor, but when you ask her questions about, do microwave radiations cause cancer? Are vaccines causing autism? Are GMOs bad? Things that, you know, she would know about, and things that as a medical professional, she's previously said, oh yeah, they're fine. But now to appease the green audience, she's kind of going against them. Do you think that damages her authenticity to me? I mean, we did a post about this which got, I don't know, I believe 2,000 shares and reached almost 500,000 people. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
We actually asked Jill Stein about that on the Young Turks. Our reporter George Trent at the Green Party convention, and she said, no, she doesn't think that vaccines cause autism. So she was very clear about that. On her other position, I'm not in a position to know what she used to believe and what she believes now. I've interviewed her twice. She didn't come across as inauthentic to me. She's actually a little too liberal for my taste. And some of
that is truly saying something, by the way.
Are genuinely out there, right? Like, so people used to say Bernie Sanders' positions were out there, but they're not. If you look at the polling in America, his positions are as mainstream as it gets in terms of what the American people want, not necessarily what Washington wants. With Jill Stein, no, she's outside the polling a little bit. So,
well, a new article.
I'm not worried about her authenticity as much as I'm concerned about polling, and then, practically swing states is a consideration because we don't want that monster Trump. No.
Well, when it comes to her running mate, I kind of looked at it like I thought she was going to try with. I mean, Gary Johnson picked Bill Weld when I was at the Libertarian Party convention. I was on Bill Weld's delegation, got to know him well there. I was looking at Jill Stein. I'm like, oh, she's going to pick probably like a real winner as her VP, the same as what Gary's doing. Instead, she picks some guy who I don't think anybody's ever heard of, and also somebody who goes out to bash Bernie Sanders, saying he's inauthentic. He doesn't care about the Black Lives Matter movement. He called Cornel West a sellout for supporting him. And he also said Bernie Sanders is a Zionist who hates Palestine. I mean, how do you respond to this vice presidential pick?
Yeah, that's not good news. I mean, if you think Jill's out there, wow, her VP pick is really out there. So Bernie Sanders has been wonderful on Palestine. Wonderful. And it's great to see. This is what I love about America. The most successful Jewish presidential candidate of all time, that was also the most pro-Palestinian presidential candidate we've ever had in my lifetime. And so many Muslims supported him. The great Jewish Muslim coalition, let alone everyone else that supported Sanders. So I think Baraka's criticisms of him are preposterous.
Well, I mean, just to show like what kind of guy this is, when I Googled him when she announced, I was like, okay, I want to do some research on this guy, like see if he's a big name, see if he's like an academic or whatever. I Googled his name and Google said to me, did you mean pajamas? They literally like thought I was trying to type in pajamas when I said his name. So I don't think she picked the A-list candidate. I kind of was like, yeah, maybe she'll pick like, I mean, I don't know. I think the Green Party, to be honest, if they pick someone like Dennis Kucinich as the nominee, I feel they'd be above Gary Johnson right now, above 15%. They would be in the debates. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if Kucinich would have done it. But there was a pick out there that could have made them more credible, and that this probably wasn't it. And I just think that they should all be in the debate anyway. I think that 50% rule is obviously picked by the Democratic and Republican Party to keep out other people from the debate. It's not that complicated. They're the ones who run the debate commission, so they don't want anyone to think that it's Republican and that Democrat. Gary Johnson should definitely be in the debate. And I think Jill Stein is polling well enough that she should be in the debate as well.
Who is that other person you think would have made the Green Party more credible? Anyone I know, or is that a little bit under wraps?
Look, I would have gone for someone who was more like Jill Stein is plenty left, super left. Doesn't have to reinforce those credentials. Maybe I'm playing a little too much real politics, but I would have gone with someone a little bit to the right of me if I was Jill Stein. Not right as an actual right wing. I mean, it's not hard to be right to the right of Jill Stein. You're a massive progressive, you'll still be to the right of Jill Stein. I probably would have gone in that direction with a little bit of name recognition, and I think she would have been better served.
Well, fight. Well, I mean, so someone who's saying fight for 15, not fight for 25, like Jill Stein. Which the minimum wage, I'm very anti-minimum wage. You and I would probably have a lot of button heads on that. But that's an interesting thought. Now, to look at the debates with Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, it looks unlikely Jill Stein will come close to making it to the debates. I think the third-party candidates, they deserve at least one debate. But I look at it and I say that Gary Johnson and Bill Weld both have a shot at making it in. And the debate rules are not the fairest, but, you know, they're okay. How do you think Gary Johnson or Bill Weld would do in their debates? How do you think how do you think it would change the game?
Well, I think they'd do great, and I think it would really change the equation in this election. In past elections, I would have been skeptical that a third-party candidate could change the equation, but Trump is in such bad shape. I actually think we were joking around about this on the air. I'm a gambling man, and if there was a legal gambling site that let me bet on Gary Johnson beating Donald Trump in the general election, you know, I'd have to get good odds, obviously, but I'd take that bet. I'm not saying I'd take it even up. Of course, it's a long shot, right? But there's odds where I go, okay, because he's going to do so much better in the debates if he's allowed in than Donald Trump. And there's so much dissatisfaction already with Republicans, whether they're businessmen, they're libertarians, etc., with Trump, that I think that he could swing the pendulum in a really interesting way.
Now, a lot of Democrats do like Gary Johnson. I believe of the Bernie Sanders supporters, 25% said they are looking or are going to vote for Gary. Do you think if the Republican Party would just get behind, like, let's say Bill Weld, because Bill Weld's a little bit more moderate than Gary Johnson, a guy who was like the first governor in this country to become pro-LGBT, a guy who is pretty moderate on some key issues, but, you know, fiscally conservative, socially, do whatever you want. And on foreign policy, he's not a warmonger. Do you think if Bill Weld was the Republican nominee, he would actually be able to do this thing?
If he was the Republican nominee,
yeah,
he'd probably be Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is enormously beatable. The Republicans just put up a clown against her. I mean, her unfavorable rankings are unbelievable, and immovable. And she cannot get them into positive territory. One of the reasons she's got, you know, any movement in the positive direction is because of the contrast between her and Trump. So Weld would do well on the VP side too, because he'd be debating against the two most boring politicians in America, Tim Kaine and Mike Pence.
Okay, and I want to do one final question because
Well, yes, those guys.
Well, I want to do one final question, and this is one where I'm not going to take a huge stance on because I don't know foreign policy that well. I'm more of an economics guy. But I did put on the page, what is the question you'd like to ask Cenk? What would you want to do? And the most popular one was, you probably can guess it, the Armenian Genocide, which something I don't know much about, but they've said you've had some opinions on it that differ from Barack Obama's. Do you have any stance you'd like to put on that? Like anything kind of quick just to wrap up here? Because that's the final question. I got to give it to the people.
Yeah, I hear you. So I wrote about that on our website. And so I pretty much want to leave it at that statement that I have it on. I wrote some ill-advised things when I was younger about it. Because I grew up Turkish and I only heard basically the Turkish side of the story. And so I went through those things that I wrote earlier. Because, you know, like you said, like you're not an expert on this stuff, and I certainly was not an expert on it, and to this day I'm nowhere near an expert on it. Sometimes people want to say, okay, no, Cenk, you have to adjudicate this one. And I get it, because, you know, on the show we have opinions about a lot of things. So they want me to have a strong opinion and decide which side is, you know.
Okay. You know,
even that question, people just find me by defensive.
You know, to say no more on it. I think your background.
When I should have gotten into it when I was younger, I don't want to make that same mistake. So a lot of people know a ton about this issue. I'll let them handle it, and for once show some, you know, wisdom in staying out of things that I don't know about.
You know, say no more on it. It's your background. I can definitely see your reasoning on that. I have no problem with that. I'm an Italian, so as a little bit of there's been some things my people's done I would defend as well. But with that, I hope you have a very nice day, and I think we're gonna have a fun little election here where we're going establishment to leftist, heavy leftists to kind of the moderate New Mexico guy with the libertarianism, and then that monster. But with that, hope you have a nice day, and any final thoughts, please give them.
All right, thank you. No, look, I love honest conversation about policy, and I wish we could get back to that in America. I mean, I don't want to end on a disagreement here, but my main issue with Gary Johnson, as I've interviewed him many times, is the money in politics. And I think that if we can get the money out of politics, we can get back to a democracy and a great debate. And I think libertarians would do really well in that, because being socially liberal and fiscally conservative is something that obviously resonates with the American people. But in order to do that, we've got to make sure our politicians are not controlled by the donors. And as long as they receive millions of dollars from them, it's just any capitalist knows they will work for those guys. And we've got to get them back to working for us.
Okay, thank you, and have a very nice day. Good speaking.
All right, take care. Thank you.
You too.